Welcome everyone to another episode of 10-Minute Poker Tips. I got a super special guest today, Andy Stacks Poker, high stakes, nosebleed cash game poker player, also star of Game of Gold. So thank you, Andy, for coming on the show. Super excited to have you.
Thanks, Derek. Love the channel. Love the idea. 10-minute poker tips. I thought it was a great idea. Give people bite-sized information on things that I've learned along the way, along the journey of poker. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I think you have a really important topic in mind, which is poker life balance. And I feel like this is something that a lot of poker players should learn about because we all definitely grind a little bit too hard, probably throw away really valuable things in our life, like family, friends, relationships, and even some of our health sometimes. That's really super important to pay attention to, right? Poker can't be the all everything in our lives. So yeah, super excited to hear you talk about this.
I think this topic is one that I especially think is important to talk about. Before I start talking about it, I do want to say that it's important for me as an ambassador for poker, especially for newer players starting to become interested in poker. I think it's important for me to talk about it so it's realistic and that I'm not adding to the illusion that poker could create for people, you know?
Yeah.
And to start off, when we talk about balance, I think there's so much poker content out there these days that's like almost oversaturated and people are painting themselves in a better light than the reality. And I think that creates some of the illusion that causes a lot of the imbalance when people dive in and then they realize like, oh, it's not what they thought it was, you know? And that comes with the emotional toll from losing and feeling guilt and shame from losing. I know, especially for me, the least amount of balance was when I was just playing all the time. Even though I told myself how much balance is important to me, I think it's really easy for players to get lost in the conquest of trying to win in poker and then just lose all balance. I think there's basically three things that I thought about this in the last few days, like how you can improve having more balance in life and then still having poker, whether it's a hobby or it's your profession. The first one I would say is striving for self-improvement. Any aspect of your life that you can search within yourself and you think could use improvement, it's important to realize like there's no poker hand or outcome or result. Like there's no one result from poker that should be so big that it defines you. You got to have continuous self-improvement and let that define you. For example, for me, like I'm an introvert just naturally. And, you know, some of the things that I've been trying to improve on are just like becoming more extroverted. And even when I started my channel and kind of putting myself more out there, that was one of the things like I thought I can improve on. And this would be a challenge. It's just how can I play poker and at the same time improve in different areas of my life? Starting a channel, doing some social media and becoming an ambassador for poker, I think that really helped me grow. Now that I've kind of done all that, I'm looking for other areas where I can improve. I'm in Taipei, for example, even something as simple as like improving my Mandarin, you know, like I've been putting a lot of work in trying to improve my communication skills and to excel there so I can do more things out here business-wise. So I would encourage players to like really look at their life and try to find areas where they can improve. By doing that, you're going to be able to naturally have more purpose. And so when things go bad in poker, it's really not going to sting as much because you have all these other positive steps forward.
How would you prioritize specific things, right? Because there's so many things that you can improve in your life, whether it's like all different aspects of poker, maybe some personal things, other hobbies you're doing, stuff with your family, right? How do you prioritize?
It takes some organizing. Maybe you list it out, figure out what's most important to you, you know, outside of poker, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, I listed things out, whether it's the social part, whether it's trying to improve my language skills, communication. One of the things that I put on is like fitness. You know, I think that's a great way for everybody to kind of incorporate their lives because I think everybody can very quickly improve their life balance from just adding a little bit of fitness and working out into their daily schedule. And so that's one of the things that I put it on the top. It's just been working wonders for my mental health. If you don't know where to start, just add a little bit of physical workout into your daily life. And then the other things that you want to do, you want to achieve, think heavily on that and prioritize where on the list, how important is that to you and start from there. So yeah. Okay, so the second solution, I would say, one of the things the tips that I think would work for balance, it's really important having like a strong social circle, whether that's in poker or not. For me personally, I found it difficult to cultivate real friendships within my immediate poker circle. If you feel the same, whether it's because of competition with your peers or whether it's feelings of animosity or jealousy, any of these unhealthy feelings that come from poker sometimes because it's such a competitive game, right? I would encourage you to look outside of your immediate poker circle and cultivate meaningful relationships outside of the game, you know, whether it's with family members or friends that you've lost touch with, even with players that maybe play lower stakes than you or play different forms of poker that are not in direct competition with you. I think it's really important to have those real friendships to achieve that balance. With me, especially like in the high stakes circles, almost like a breeding ground for all those unhealthy, feelings because of how competitive those games are. Probably one of the worst places to look for real friends. So I think it's really important to really have a group of guys that genuinely care about you. I'm not talking about like guys where there's like a mutual benefit and you're getting something and it's transactional. It's really important to have that social circle. If you don't have that, it's definitely worth the time to invest in cultivating those friendships.
And I think this could be a difficult thing for a lot of poker players because poker can be all consuming, not only when you're playing, but because you're studying, you're trying to get better and networking with your poker friends to all get better together. And then as you're cultivating friendships outside of poker, that's going to take some of your time away, right? And then all of a sudden it becomes like this balancing act of not like shutting out other side, because then your non-poker friends might get disappointed, right? If they don't see you. So how do you find, I guess, that balance of being able to spend time with both worlds?
It's not easy. I'm preaching all these things, and these are all the mistakes that I've had to go through and really strive to work towards, especially like when you're losing and there's games there, or whether it's like tournaments or cash and like, you want to fire the next one. It's so easy to just disregard all the stuff that we're talking about here. It really takes a conscious effort on our part to take a step back and work on some areas outside of poker that's ultimately going to improve my mental state, and that's going to help my results in poker. When you play so much poker and there's no balance, the game is just much less enjoyable. And I'm sure you, Derek, can also, play a lot of tournaments, right? And I just can't imagine the players that just fire, and then they just play a full schedule. They just bust and just keep registering the next one. It must be really tough, right?
And you're absolutely right that having a diminished mental state is going to affect your results, whether you want to admit it or not, right? It can be really bad. Another question for you, though, is, I guess, for the people who are making friends in poker, what type of people did you attract to in poker? Like what type of friends were you trying to keep in a more close circle?
Personally, for me right now, my closest friends that are still in my life are the ones that have been there during my toughest moments, and the people that I've known for a long time when I was playing really small stakes. Not everybody has that. So that's why I think it's important to make that effort to try to find activities outside of poker where you can foster and you can nurture those relationships with people. You can find common interests. It's really not easy. I think baby step is the way to go. It's not like overnight you're going to wake up and this light bulb is going to come on and you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to be super positive. I'm going to play a tournament, bust out. And then I'm just gonna like leave and then go work out. Like that's not gonna happen, right? Like we gotta be realistic, But I think baby steps is the way to go, and making these little changes really goes a long way. I want to talk about one third solution that I think is probably one of the hardest ones to do, but it's probably one of the most effective for the balanced life in poker. And this is one that in the last year or so has really resonated with me more. That's finding something else that's really meaningful to do outside of poker. Of course, all the stuff that we talked about before, like working out and self-improvement, those are meaningful things. But I think there's something to be said about searching for something that has real meaning to it, because I think with poker, the reason why it's so easy to lose balance is because at the end of the day, your primary objective is very self-serving, right? You're trying to just beat everybody and trying to win all the money. And so I think naturally, the way the game is designed, without balance, it's very easy to become very miserable very easily. I like some of the most miserable people I know are like some of like the most successful poker players. It's so ironic. The reason is because they just lack life balance and they're not doing anything else meaningful in their lives. And some of the happiest players that I know are recreational players that lose all the time. But obviously, they can afford to lose, but I also think they just have really balanced life outside of the game. That's really the key.
Yeah, I think there's so much glorification of greatness, right? Whether it's sports, whether it's poker, and the very best ones are the ones that are just, in the gym all the time and commit everything and throw away everything in their lives to succeed. And I think the last thing that you want to do is succeed so much, but then 10 years down the line, you have all these regrets about things, right? Like where your life has gone. At that point, it's too late. Right. So you're absolutely right that you do need to take steps towards meaningful, balanced relationships. And you're right that it is baby steps. You're not going to fix this immediately. This is actually like a lifelong commitment to that like mindset, right?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. Back to just playing too much and not having the balance. After a while, if you don't have anything else meaningful going on or actually actively trying to incorporate meaningful things to your life, the poker just starts to feel pointless, and it feels like an endless cycle, especially when there's big monetary setbacks and you invested so much time and it wasn't even fun. So then it's like, what's the point, right? If we're not having fun when we're playing poker, then there really is kind of pointless. Again, easier said than done in terms of like finding something meaningful. I think what it comes down to, is we need to find something that's number one is fulfilling, right? We're passionate about, right? Number two, solves a problem of some sort, contributes or helps somebody. I think there's a lot of self-help books. Like, I don't want to preach too much, but I think there's a lot of good principles in these books. Like, there's one by Jay Shetty, a really famous one called Think Like a Monk. Long story short, this guy, he had a business degree, he's a normal dude, he had a corporate career, and then he went to live like a monk for a duration of time, and he shares what he learned in this journey. One of the biggest takeaways was he talks about our energy as human beings. We're naturally wired for service. And so when we do things that are like meaningful and helps others, it increases our joy and meaning in our life. Complete opposite of poker, which is very self-serving, and it's beneficial and it pays off to be self-serving in poker, right? Obviously, when you play poker, yeah, you got to be cutthroat. You got to go for the money. You got to go for the throw, right? But outside of poker, I think is where you can have that separation and you can start to incorporate little elements of these things. You know, I'm not saying like go be a monk, right? But you can, yeah, shave your head. No, but you can do things like you can start with like little daily simple actions, whether it's just being a good friend to somebody, mentoring people without any expectation of anything in return. I think all this counts, right? Because now you feel like you're doing something positive. I think that's going to be a lot more fulfilling than just every day waking up, trying to figure out how to get all the chips. And at the end of the day, is that it? You know?
I think a good analogy to that is, you know, I think the very best players are absolute killers at the table, even with their friends. But as the second they're off the table, they're just like back to normal, right? So you can just like turn it on and turn it off. But that is a really good analogy to what you're basically saying is that, you know, you don't, you know, you can sit there and commit yourself to poker, but you have to find other things, and it's okay to have that separation. Was there some sort of inflection point in your poker career where you started thinking about these things? Did like a specific event happen, or was it sort of a slow realization?
I think it was kind of a gradual epiphany, kind of a gradual realization. Probably a lot of it has to do with aging. I think naturally as we get older, we start questioning what else is there. I think once one has some amount of success in the game, they start looking for more. It's like the hierarchy of needs, right? Once you have your basic needs met, then you start looking for more down the pyramid, right? And so in poker, it works kind of the same. Once you attain some level of success, then you start thinking like, what else do I want in life? And how else do I want to spend my days as they are numbered now? You know, and that's part of the reason why I've started to think outside the box in terms of other things I can do and stuff like that.
Yeah, for the younger players out there, listen to the OGs because we know what we're talking about. We've been in it for a long time, and now, you know, we're kind of looking back and wishing we could do all these things differently.
I hope this didn't sound too pessimistic or negative for players, especially newer players that are trying to come into the game and they love the game, they're passionate, they're excited. I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from playing. In fact, it's the opposite. I highly encourage poker players to go all in on poker, you know, especially if you love the game, keep improving. But at the same time, it's really important to try to have balance outside of poker. And if that means that you need to keep poker as just a recreational hobby, you got to be honest with yourself. Keep it as a hobby because, like I said, some of the happiest players I know are all the players that have a full life outside of the game and they actively do other things.
Yeah, it sounds like your recommendation is that, you know, whatever it is that you're working on, commit to it as hard as you can. So when you're playing poker, commit to that, play hard, but then find time to do other stuff in your life. And then at that point, commit time to your family, commit time to your friends, commit time to your other hobbies, right? And just go all in on that, but just make sure that you are balancing all of that together. This is fantastic, fantastic advice for everyone.
For sure.
So thanks so much, Andy, for coming on the show. This was amazing. Love to have you back on to talk about this stuff more, hear more about your adventures over there in Taipei.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks for having me.